thank you so much for being here, parents. I'm going to go ahead and start us off real quickly here with an introduction and let your principal, your future principal, say her hellos before I kind of go on and take over the presentation. So, Miss Tuttle, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to be here tonight. We're just so happy to be able to see you and give you a little bit of information to kind of help that transition from elementary school to middle school. So, welcome, everyone. It's nice seeing you, and thank you for being here. And I'll pass it on to our amazing school counselor, Mr. Puebla.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mrs. Tuttle. And again, thank you so much, parents. And I see some students too, as well, too, that we see some students online here with us too. But thank you so much for being here again and taking the time to listen a little bit about what middle school might be like. If this is your first child in middle school, then it's a big change, right? Because we're going from, an elementary setting with one teacher, maybe two teachers at most, one classroom, to many more, right? So it's a that transitional phase that hopefully we hope to be able to provide support and information for you so you feel comfortable and your student feel comfortable too coming to us. So we're going to get started here with some information. In terms of administration, I want you to be familiar with some faces, right? So we do have our principal, Mrs. Tuttle, which she just introduced herself. We do have a new principal, and Ms. Kabasi. I'm still learning her name, but one of those right there. But she's our new assistant principal. And then Ms. Corrales, our dean of students, kind of like oversees, help us out with some of the discipline and just day-to-day functions of our school. We have a front office staff as well too, super supportive staff, and you'll likely have one of them pick up the phone if you call the front office and wish to speak to any of us. Okay. In terms of the PAW Center, I am, as I mentioned, Mr. Pueblo, I'm the school counselor at Wiltsey Middle School. So I am the school counselor, meaning if your child is under my caseload. So when you call the school and if you're in need of speaking to the school counselor, that would be me. I do reside in the PAW Center. I like to think of it like as a central hub of the school. It's where a lot of things take place. And oftentimes your student may say, Mom, I need to turn this into the PAW Center. Mom, I need to call the PAW Center. Mom, I went to the PAW Center and I spoke to. So the PAW Center is where a lot of folks are housed, and that's a lot of resources basically. So it's myself. Miss Alvarado is our assistant in there. Mr. Sipple, our safety officer, helps our campus stay safe. And then we have 3 student mentors. And a student mentor is probably what you have in your elementary school site. You might have those individuals. They are there to support our students, right? They're kind of like, I think of them as like big brothers or like a big sister. They're there to help out, in any way they can, whether it's a talk, whether it's supporting them with academics, or just kind of like troubleshooting, problem solving. So different ways it can support you. In terms of what other things we do in the PAW Center, I do academic advisement with families, with students. Sometimes we have problems with students, maybe like they're just like not getting along, or they're just kind of like arguing or whatnot. Conflict management, we do that in there too. I do house all like our student and family resources are how that's you would go through us in order to kind of help access those resources. So, for example, if we have a family that's in need of like food or clothing, maybe housing, or even like counseling, mental health resources, you would reach out to us, and then we would get you connected with those proper resources. I'm also doing guidance lessons. I'll do guidance lessons with classes. I'll push myself into classrooms and share out with students. We handle group counseling and then also individual counseling. Unfortunately, because of the size of the school, we're about 900 plus students. It would be really difficult for me to do one-on-one counseling with just about every single student. But for those cases where we have there's a bigger need, where there's maybe there's a need for, let's say, weekly counseling. Our district does have awesome mental health therapists, mental health practitioners that will support us with those referrals when we have those referrals in place. So keep all that in mind. There's a lot of information there to unpack, but if you ever have any questions regarding kind of any of those topics or areas, you're welcome to reach out and call the PAW Center, and I'll give you all that information in a bit too, in terms of our contact information. So what can you expect in terms of middle school and what that's going to look like, right? So like I said, it's a big change coming from elementary to middle school, and your students might have heard a little bit about what to expect already. So let me share this out with parents now. In terms of summer registration, we generally hold something, I'm going to say in July, and you'll get something in the mail. You'll get information from us in the mail. So as long as your information, your address, your phone number, and all that is current, we'll get that same information at our site, and then we'll send you information in the mail. We'll do phone calls at home as well too, text messages to let you know when those future dates will be. Okay. This past school year, we did do like a drive-through registration where parents pulled up in a car and we gave them all their supplies, their Chromebooks, their schedules. We may have that in place, or we may actually be able to do an in-person walk-in type registration where you can go into the NPR, pick up your supplies. It's all dependent on our COVID rates, right? As you know, this entire year has been based on COVID rates, and so if the rates go down, then we might be able to get to a point where we're able to have you on site to pick those materials up during the summer. So keep that in mind. And so everything is pending, but we hope to be there and we'll keep you informed along the entire way. But at registrations where you would pick up all your materials, including PE clothes that you would buy for your student as well too for PE class, which is a big change for students coming to middle school, having to have PE 5 days a week. School loop, super important. So in elementary, you probably used to seeing grades 1, 2, 3, 4, in terms of a number that the teacher gives you. Middle school, we're going to use letter grades, right? A, B, C, D, F. And we use School Loop, which is an app that you can actually download to your phone. So, and then monitor your students' grades and then see how many missing assignments they have, what scores they got on tests or on homework assignments. So, and then also how to communicate with teachers. So right now you're probably using maybe Class Dojo or something along those lines. School Loop allows you to email teachers directly through this method, or you can use regular email, but this is like an all-in-one suite, so you can actually do that and then stay connected with school news that'll be pushed out through School Loop as well too. You'll be able to register for School Loop sometime in early fall, right? Towards the later part of July, early August would be the ideal time to register. And to register, all you'll need is your student's ID number. That's all the information you need to do that registration. We'll give you more information regarding School Loop once we get closer to the new school year, okay? But I just kind of wanted to front load some of this information. In terms of our schedule for next school year, we are looking at, hopefully, again, if everything goes as planned and the rates continue to fall, we will be looking at in-person instruction in the fall. We will have 6 periods on your student schedule. So period 1, the late bell rings at 8:15, and so maybe a good time to get here to school would be, let's say, 8 o'clock would be like a good general time to get to school. Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday we get out at 2:30. Tuesday's our early day at 1:15 is where we get released. Okay, so again, this is all subject to change. Hopefully, it's what we end up with in the fall if everything goes as planned. One thing you will notice if you've had students here in the past, if you have older siblings, is that we do not have zero period anymore, and that's due in part to a Senate bill that passed recently in California, which does not allow schools to hold zero period classes anymore because we have to have a start time no earlier than 8 o'clock. So we will not have zero period available from this point forward. So it'll be periods 1 through 6. Let me go ahead and move on over here to the elective class. So elective classes for 6th grade will be looking a little bit different for next school year, and this is different from what we've done in the years past. And we're choosing to kind of go this route in order to provide that extra support that 6th graders may need in that transitional phase. We want to see everyone exceed and do amazing things in middle school, right? And so one of those pieces we felt was missing was that extra piece of support. And so that support is going to come in the form of something called an exploratory elective for 6th graders. And then aside from that, we'll have ELD and ILET. That'll continue to be there, which is a class that you'll have if your child is designated as an EL student. Okay. And then there's also AVID, which will still be there in place for 6th graders. So if your child applied for AVID, then they should already be in contact with our AVID coordinators and be likely setting up like an interview soon in order to get into that program if they're accepted. Okay, so those would be your 3 options for electives for 6th grade coming in. And to give you a little bit more information about what that exploratory class will look like, it will be kind of modeled after AVID. It won't have all of those AVID components in there, but most of them will be in there. But we will be focusing like on organization, as you see here, on study skills, note taking, having these students have this positive growth mindset, and work on some time management. Those are some overarching themes. We'll be using that book that you see here, Seven Habits of a Highly Effective Teen, as part of the coursework in this class. But again, it's meant to provide guidance for these students, because we find that middle school can be a very difficult transition for some students, and not all students, but for most students, it is a tricky transition in terms of more teachers, more classes, more homework, more papers, more of everything. So we find that this will hopefully help fill in those gaps and help provide that extra support that students may need for that middle school piece. Okay. So a couple of questions that have kind of already come across, when we kind of introduced that idea was, for example, what if your child plays an instrument in elementary school and you kind of want to continue that? We are looking at at working with our music director, music teacher at middle school, and creating some type of before school or after school music program for those kids, so they can still participate and still kind of continue with that musical experience through sixth grade, and then transition to an actual class in seventh grade. So we are looking at setting that up. I do have a questionnaire that I'll show you a bit later on that students might have already filled out for us. If they haven't already, they still have some time. But one of the questions was asking them if they'd be interested in a club like that. So that's one way we're getting an idea of the amount of interest that we would have. And then so far, a lot of students are interested, which is awesome to hear. Can they take 2 electives? Currently, we wouldn't be able to, because we don't have zero period anymore. So it would only be 1 elective. And then in the event that your child is an English learner, an EL student, and that would be their elective class would be IELT ELD. So the one benefit of this next year, though, would be that for that student that's an English learner, they'd be able to take that after school like music class or music program as like enrichment. So that's definitely a plus for our English learners. And then I don't know if you've seen it or not, but if you've driven by Wiltsey recently, we are building some stuff. There's a lot of construction on site right now. We are actually in the process of building a huge, like a multi-use gymnasium with a lot of really neat features inside of it. It's be called the Wellness Arts and Technology Center. And so inside of it will be housed a maker lab, like a technology lab as well too, for us to hold meetings and classes in there and workshops. And then there's also going to be a gymnasium in there, indoor gymnasium with seating and everything in a stage area for events and stuff. So there'll be a really neat facility that we'll hopefully have ready. I think we're projecting January completion date. So in January, hopefully right around around that time, it'll be completed. We do have a social media account that you're welcome to follow along for updates on the construction. And just once you start school here with us, it'd be neat for you to stay connected with us. So that was the general idea in terms of what the middle school transition will look like. I did want to kind of before I wrap up is kind of provide some tips per se, in terms of what I've kind of picked up over the years working at Wiltsey. And in terms of the area that I feel like sometimes may need more attention. So I wanted to touch on that real quickly for you as you as you look at supporting your new teenager as they come into middle school. But one is going to be to stay connected, right? I want you to make sure that that connection does not drop off, because just because they're a little bit older, it doesn't mean that we can kind of like let them go and just kind of let them do their own thing. I think they still need some support. So make sure we stay connected. Attend coffee with the principal meetings if you can. Participate in like our site council if you'd like, or any type of other committee opportunity that might arise. But definitely stay connected. That's super, super important. Organization. They're going to be coming to a site with more teachers, more classes, right? So super important for you to set up at home, like a once a week, maybe routine, maybe like on a Sunday afternoon before they start the new week. Clean out that backpack, and that exploratory elective will be helping out with this piece as well too. But obviously it helps when we both work together as a team, right? Our parents and school together as one team. So definitely put that in place. Getting some good, healthy routines at home as well too. In terms of, let's say, establishing a time when they have to do homework, preferably not in front of a TV, but maybe in a quiet area if possible. But get that in place. So they're going to need it, especially as they focus with more teachers and more classes. And the sleep. If it's one thing I see, it's a lot of sleepy teenagers in middle school, sleepy preteens and adolescents. They need at least 9 hours of sleep. And if I have kids hearing right now, when you sleep is when you grow. So that's when your brain is developing and expanding and making better new connections. I mean, it's also where your body is stretching itself out and growing. So if it's not getting enough sleep, those things aren't going to develop. So super important, 9 hours of sleep. So if your child complains, let them know Mr. Pobla told you 9 hours. And that would be about a 9:30, 10, the latest sleep time, right? Reading, it's just as important in middle school and if not in high school as it is in elementary, right? Ask your child what their Lexile number is. They should be able to tell you that number, their RI number. And they should be able to give you a number right now because they've taken that test 3 times already this year. And so right now, for example, they should probably be to be on target in the 800s. And if they're not in the 800s, then we got to read some more. Okay. But that number, that Lexile number, is a good indicator in terms of how much reading they're doing and how well they're comprehending what they're reading as well too. So if they're not quite at grade at read level, I'm sorry, at grade level, make sure we establish that routine and that we continue it through middle school, please. If you're not able to be in the same room when they're reading, one strategy I always tell my parents is, well, if they have an iPad or a phone, have them record themselves. Usually it helps to read out loud because you pick up better on the comprehension piece. So reading out loud and recording yourself on your phone and then having them show you, look, mom, I read 30 minutes. Here you go. That would be a good routine to establish as well. Okay. Cell phones. Kids can't have cell phones on campus. We can't. We're not going to say no to cell phones. I personally, obviously, it's obviously a parent discretion, right? Whether or not you choose to have a cell phone for your child. But obviously, cell phones are huge responsibilities. What we see in middle school is that we see a lot of students that just don't quite know how to handle or how to responsibly use a phone. So they're it's just like I think of it like as a teenager. When my little boy turns 15 and they wanted to get the driver's permit, I'm not just going to give him the keys and say, all right, we'll take it around the block and I'll see you later. I'm going to be there with him and guide him, right? So similar to a phone, they're a huge responsibility. So we want to make sure that we're actually on top of them, right? In terms of monitoring their use. So some quick, simple suggestions would be to obviously talk to your kid about their cell phone use, follow them on their social media accounts, monitor the use, and as it says right here, wait if possible. But in the event that your child does have a phone and they need it for whatever purposes that you need to have them, one suggestion would be for you to have them leave their phones in your bedroom at night to charge. This way they're not using it in the middle of the night, which we often see, with kids staring at their phones in the middle of the night. So that's one quick suggestion. The only homework that I gave your child, and your child's teacher probably already mentioned this to them and gave them the link, because I have about 180 kids that already completed this, which is awesome, was a short survey that they have access to already. Okay, and I'll keep it open until tomorrow or beyond that if I need to, just based on the number of numbers we see. But it was a short questionnaire asking them for some input regarding for next school year, and I'm going to show you what that survey looks like right now in a bit. Because it's found in the Wiltsey PAW Center website. And so this website is kind of where I house all of my information, videos, links, tutorials. There's a lot of stuff on here, but I'm just going to kind of or focus in on that tab that says Future Wildcats for you. And the URL is there as you see it there, and I'm going to actually punch it into the chat box if you want it. I have access to it there. You can probably do a Google for tiny URL or just PAW Center Wiltsey, and you'll see the website pretty quickly. But I do want to show you what it looks like, as your students probably already saw this. At the very top, it says Future Wildcats, and that's for you. So you'll click on there. And on here is the orientation video I created for your students that they watched already. As well too is the registration survey that's right here. And on here, I'm also going to house the recording that you see here, and also I have the Spanish version too. So if you have a parent that you know of and they missed it, this is where it's going to be housed as well too. But the survey was pretty simple and kind of straightforward for the most part. It's their first name, last name, their student ID number, their current grade, which would be fifth grade for most of you. And then there were some simple questions here. One was regarding AVID. if you were planning on applying for Avid, you're indicating that on there for me. And then for music, if you were interested in maybe participating in a music club, this isn't a commitment. So it's just kind of like you letting me know whether or not you might be interested. They picked one of these questions, one of these answers right here, and then provided any input or comments, and then submit it. So it was a really short survey, but if they haven't completed it already, ask your student, and then have them complete it for me, please, pretty quickly, as soon as possible. So I'm going to go back over here. And I think that was it. So, in terms of anything else, obviously, that I didn't cover, if you have anything in the future that you want to kind of reach out and kind of bounce off of me, you're welcome to call the school. Whenever you do call the school, you can just ask to speak to Mr. Puebla, the school counselor, or the PAW Center, and they'll forward that call over to us as well too. But I think that is it in terms of the overall introduction I wanted to give parents today. And at this point, I'll just open it up. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those questions for you.